Hi everyone, my name is Glenda with SureFit Designs. In this tutorial, we're going to talk about the princess line that goes into the Armscye. In a previous video, I actually showed you how to design the princess line going into the shoulder line, much like the blouse that I'm wearing. And even though this is a pattern blouse, when we get in really close and take a look at this, you can actually see that seam line going up into the shoulder line. But I've had a lot of questions of how to design the princess line into the armhole. Well, it's very, very similar to the shoulder line with a couple of very slight differences. So let's take a look at that. First of all, one of the major questions I usually get asked is, where in the armhole do I actually put that curve? Well, it depends on a couple of different factors. And so on this mannequin, I've actually done two different sides. On the left-hand side, I've got the curvature going up in towards the shoulder line, not right at it, but about an inch and a quarter away. And on the right-hand side, I've taken that Armscye design line into about the middle of the armhole. And there are different reasons for doing one or the other. Let's first take a look at the vertical line that we're creating. When you do and design the line coming up higher towards the shoulder line, you're creating more of an upright vertical line. And of course, most of you know that vertical lines are going to give your body visual height. And so for somebody who's short like me, I typically would take the line up higher or into the shoulder line. Now, another consideration is how curvy this curve is. The curvier the stitching line is, the more challenging it is going to be to sew it together. And it's because you've got a concave and a convex curve coming together, and one you need to clip, the other you need to notch, so that the stitching lines will actually sew together properly. And the bigger the bust you are, the more curvy those curves are going to be. So if we take a look on the right-hand side, this one actually, if you are like an A, B, C cup dart, that's going to be relatively easy to sew together. But when you become a D, double D, E, or beyond, the shorter this curve and the curvier that curve is, it's going to be more challenging to sew together. And that happens with the larger bra cup size or dart size. So those are some considerations that you just need to be aware of when you're making your decision of which one you're going to draft and design. Now, another thing in this bodice, this princess line, I have actually stitched this going all the way down into the hem level, and this just hangs straight down the center of the waist fitting dart. If you want to sculpt this princess line towards your body and have it more shaped, then all you're going to do is follow the dart stitching lines rather than coming straight down through the center of the dart. And again, we can take a look at that on the pattern when we get to the pattern work. But you know, the beauty of doing and designing a princess line based on your body blueprint is that you're going to get the curvature exactly where you need it to be. Nothing is more unattractive than when you buy something in ready-to-wear or use a commercial pattern and it's got a princess line and the curvature for their princess line doesn't fit where your curve is. So you get a dent or a bump above or below, and it just doesn't look very good. So when you design it yourself, and you already know where your apex marking is, you can be assured that you're going to get an excellent fit in that area. So now let's take a look at how to draw that on your personal body blueprint. Let's continue drawing the Armscye princess line. Now you can see what I've got here is the basic bodice, and whether you call it a body blueprint like I do or a bodice sloper like the industry does, what you're going to end up with is your apex, exactly where the high point of your bust is. And that's important when you're designing this princess line because, of course, that's where you want the bulge of the fabric to go over the curve of your body. So let's take a look at what we need to do. We're going to create a side portion of the princess line and a center front portion. Before I can cut those two sections apart, I need to transfer the straight of grain over into the side front portion. So I'll do that in a different color, and also remember at home you're going to be doing this in pencil. I'm just using these colored pens for the sake of clarity in this demonstration. And I'm using a grain ruler like this. I'm just lining up the straight of grain with one of the lines on the ruler, and then I'm going to come over about 4 or 5 inches, and I'm going to draw a parallel line, and that puts in the straight of grain for the side portion of the bodice front. Then you need to decide whether you're going to go into the middle of the armhole or up higher into the area nearer the shoulder line. Again, it depends on your body shape and size and what you think is going to look best on your body. And then you use the designing stylus, and I'm just going to draw both of these in so that you can see what they look like. I'll draw one in red, and then I'm going to draw one in pink so that you can really see the distinctive difference between the two different shapes of lines. And we also are going to be cutting down through the center of that waist fitting dart. So I'm just going to draw straight down like this and connect it all together. Now you will be putting on X's for matching notches so that when you go to sew it all back together, it's going to help you establish exactly where those seam lines match together. So I'm going to be cutting open on that pink line. Now before we do that, there's one other very important thing to do, and that is to transfer this bust fitting dart up into the armhole so that you end up taking that shape and giving that bust shape coming out of your armhole. So what we need to do is draw what is called the designer's dart. This blue line, your standard bust fitting dart, is the dressmaker's dart, and these green lines that I'm drawing are the designer dart. So now I need to cut that designer's dart out of there and move it up into the armhole area. So what you need to do now is cut, and you notice that I put a little piece of tape over top of the apex marking, and that's just to give it a little bit of stability in that area because you really don't want it all to fall apart on you. So I'm cutting on that green line, and I'm going to simply remove that dart, and it's stuck right there, so let's just pull that away. Okay, now I need to cut open on the desired princess line. In this case I'll use the upper curvature. I'll just take that all the way through like this. Oops, I think I didn't quite get it cut all the way. Let's see if that released it. There we go. All right, now what you need to do is pivot that side dart shut. And it's almost like magic, isn't it? It opened up that dart structure in the armhole area. So if you had a B-cup dart, it would be a B opening. If you had a D-cup dart, it would be a D opening. And that's how you always maintain the maximum good fit going around your body. So now I've transferred the bust fitting dart, and I'm just going to tape this shut. Now what I can continue doing is cutting down through the center of this waist fitting dart, like this. And now we have separated the center front portion from the side front portion, like that. And because I have now cut in the center of the pattern, I now need to add seam allowances. Well, you know that's very easy to do. You just simply tape a piece of tracing vellum underneath like this, and just position it so that you've got enough vellum there, and tape it down well. And I'll have to do that other piece next. Let's get that repositioned. And it's very easy to do this with the designing stylus. Just take the designing stylus and lay the edge near where you want to have your seam extending from. In this case, I'm just going to go down through the center of that waist fitting dart, and then you're going to draw on this to the edge of the slot that's nearest the outside edge, and that puts on the seam allowance. And of course, we need to do that going up into the curvature. So it will look like this. And I just want to make that a nice smooth curve going into the apex. So I'm just going to shift the stylus along and smear it a little bit. That's why you don't want to use these kind of pens when you're doing your work at home. And oh, before I move that away, these X's that you made for matching notches, you're going to extend that out like that. All right, and now we need to put that away, get some more tracing vellum, and put that underneath like this, and get that taped in place. And once again, just take your designing stylus and position it appropriately. Add your seam allowances like this. And going into the curve, find that curve that you used on the designing stylus. Now, all you need to do is slip the stylus out until the edge where the seam allowance is lines up with the curve that you just drew, and then you can add your seam allowance. And just follow that down along on the existing vellum. And when you get into this curve of your apex, just make it just a slight flatter curve like that. And of course, you want to extend out those X's to become your matching notches. So you can see that this is a curvier curve than this one is. And the bigger your bust, the greater the curve, particularly going into that lower Armscye position. So that's as easy as it is to create and draw a princess line going into the Armscye. Now, one last thing that I wanted to mention too, and I did allude to this earlier, is if you want a sculpted waistline area, instead of coming straight down through the center of the waist fitting dart, all you need to do is stitch on the edge of the dart. And of course, remember that you drew your dart with this waist darts template. And so you know exactly where it is. You just need to mark that in. You can see my stitching here where I came straight down through the center. If you wanted this sculpted to your body, you'd follow more of those blue lines of the dart stitching line, and that will pull the princess line right in snug to your body. You don't have to do it all the way. You could do it halfway if you wanted to. That choice is yours. So for this and other informative videos, make sure you do go on over to the SureFit Designs Learning Center and click on the video library, because there you're going to see all kinds of complimentary videos to help you get one of the very best fits possible with your SureFit Designs patterns.